Have you ever wondered about the real story of football? Not just the touchdowns and trophies, but where it all began. Most people think American football is just an offshoot of rugby or soccer, but the truth is way more complex and fascinating. Let's travel back to the late 19th century, to the hallowed halls of Ivy League universities. This is where our story starts, not on a professional field, but on college campuses, where students were playing a chaotic mix of games. Imagine this, a field full of young men running, kicking, and tackling with barely any rules. The game they played was a wild blend of soccer and rugby. It was brutal, often resulting in serious injuries. It got so bad that some universities, like Harvard, even banned it. But the spirit of the game was infectious, and students were determined to keep it alive. They knew something had to change. The game needed structure, it needed rules, and it needed a visionary. That visionary was a man named Walter Camp. You might have heard his name before, and for good reason. Often called the father of American football, Camp was a student and coach at Yale University. He looked at this chaotic, dangerous game and saw its potential. He believed it could be something truly special, something uniquely American. Starting in the 1880s, Camp began proposing rule changes at a series of meetings with representatives from other universities. These weren't minor tweaks, they were revolutionary ideas that would forever shape the sport. One of Camp's most brilliant innovations was the line of scrimmage. Think about it before him. The game was a continuous, scrum-like struggle. Camp introduced the idea that play would stop and restart, with the two teams facing each other over the ball. This single change brought order to the chaos. It introduced a strategic element that had been missing. It wasn't just about brute force anymore. It was about planning, about outthinking your opponent before the play even began. This was the birth of football as a chess match on grass. But Camp didn't stop there. He also introduced the system of downs. Originally, he proposed that a team should have 3 attempts, or downs, to advance the ball 5 yards. If they succeeded, they got a fresh set of downs. If they failed, they had to turn the ball over to the other team. This rule was a game changer. It created a constant sense of urgency and suspense. Every play mattered. It forced teams to develop offensive strategies, to think about how to gain those precious yards. Later, this was updated to the 4 downs and 10 yards we know today, but the core concept came directly from Camp. Another huge change was reducing the number of players on the field from 15 to 11. This opened up the game, creating more space for running and, eventually, passing. It made the sport faster, more dynamic, and more exciting for spectators. He also standardized the scoring system, assigning different point values to touchdowns, field goals, and safeties. Suddenly, there was a clear, consistent way to determine a winner. Walter Camp essentially took a rough stone and chiseled it into the diamond we now know as American football. But the evolution of the game was far from over. In the early 1900s, football faced another crisis. The game was still incredibly violent. The style of play was dominated by mass formations, like the flying wedge, where players would interlock their arms and charge forward, creating brutal collisions. In 1905 alone, 19 players died, and over 100 were seriously injured. The public outcry was immense. Newspapers called for the sport to be abolished. It seemed like football was on the brink of extinction. The situation was so dire that it caught the attention of the President of the United States, Theodore Roosevelt. Roosevelt was a huge fan of the sport and its strenuous nature, but he knew it couldn't continue like this. He summoned the coaches of the top university teams Harvard, Yale, and Princeton to the White House. He delivered a clear ultimatum: reform the game, or he would be forced to ban it by executive order. This presidential intervention was a pivotal moment. It forced the leaders of the sport to come together and make drastic changes to save it. In response, dozens of universities formed a new governing body, which would later become the National Collegiate Athletic Association, or the NCAA. Their primary mission was to make the game safer. And how did they do it? Their most significant change was legalizing the forward pass. This was a radical idea at the time. The ball was almost exclusively run or kicked. The forward pass was seen as a gimmick, something that went against the spirit of the game. But its advocates argued it would spread the players out across the field, reducing the deadly collisions at the line of scrimmage. The introduction of the forward pass didn't just make the game safer. It completely revolutionized it. It opened up a whole new dimension of offensive strategy. Quarterbacks were no longer just glorified blockers or handoff machines. They could now impact the game with their arms. This led to the development of passing routes, defensive coverages, and the rise of the star receiver. The game became more aerial, more graceful, and infinitely more exciting for the fans. It was a change born out of necessity that ended up becoming one of football's most thrilling aspects. As the 20th century progressed, the game continued to evolve. Professional leagues began to form, competing with the college game for popularity. In 1920, the American Professional Football Association was founded in a car dealership in Canton, Ohio. 2 years later, it renamed itself the National Football League, the NFL. In its early days, the NFL was a gritty, blue-collar league, a far cry from the multi-billion-dollar enterprise it is today. Players often worked regular jobs during the week and played for a few bucks on Sunday. The NFL's rise was slow but steady. It was the 1958 NFL Championship game, often called the greatest game ever played, that truly launched the league into the national consciousness. The Baltimore Colts, led by quarterback Johnny Unitas, faced off against the New York Giants in a dramatic, sudden-death overtime thriller. It was broadcast live across the country, and it captivated millions. People who had never cared about pro football were suddenly hooked. This game proved that professional football could be just as exciting, if not more so, than the college game. The 1960s saw the birth of a rival league, the American Football League, or AFL. The AFL brought a flashier style of play. With high-flying offenses and colorful characters like Joe Namath of the New York Jets, the competition between the NFL and AFL for players and fans was fierce. This rivalry drove up salaries and pushed both leagues to innovate. Ultimately, the intense competition led to a merger agreement in 1966, and from that merger came the creation of a new championship game, the Super Bowl. The first Super Bowl in 1967 was a modest affair compared to the global spectacle it is today. But it marked the beginning of a new era for American football. The merger solidified the NFL's place as the premier professional football league in the world. Since then, the game has continued to change, with constant adjustments to rules to improve player safety, the introduction of instant replay to ensure fairness, and the development of ever more complex offensive and defensive schemes. So, the next time you're watching a game, remember its incredible journey. It's a story of student innovation, presidential intervention, and groundbreaking rule changes. It's a sport that was born in chaos, saved from the brink of extinction, and transformed into a national obsession. From Walter Camp's line of scrimmage to the forward pass to the Super Bowl, the history of football is a testament to the power of evolution and the enduring passion for the game. It's so much more than just a sport. It's a piece of American history that's still being written every Sunday. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the sports we love. Let me know in the comments what piece of football history surprises you the most. See you next time.